The last romance in Atlantis. The water mirror showed Lyria exactly how she would die. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. She watched herself drown, watched the great temple collapse, watched the jade walls crack like eggshells, watched her own face disappear beneath black water that swallowed the sky. Then she watched everyone else die too. 29 days, the high priestess Mythic said from the shadows. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. The alignment happens in 29 days, when the 3 moons converge over the pillars of Atlas. Lyria couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The vision kept replaying behind her eyes, screaming children, collapsing towers, the ocean rising like a living thing with teeth. "We have to warn them," Lyria whispered. "Evacuate the city, build ships, something, anything. And start a panic that kills more people than the flood." Mythic stepped forward, her ancient face carved with new lines. "Think, child. 10 million souls on this island. Maybe 300 ships in our harbor. Even if we started building today, we'd save, 50,000? 100,000. Better than none. Is it?" The high priestess's eyes were hard. When those 100,000 tramples 2 million trying to reach the ships? When neighboring islands close their ports because they can't feed our refugees? When the mainland kingdoms we've ignored for centuries suddenly have to deal with an army of desperate Atlanteans? Lyria's stomach turned. She saw it. Saw how salvation could become slaughter. "So we just let everyone die?" "No." Mythic handed her a scroll sealed with the king's golden trident. "We save who we can, quietly. There are plans in motion you don't know about. Secret evacuation points, supply caches, hidden routes to the mainland. And the rest? The rest get 29 more days in the greatest city ever built." Mythic's voice cracked. 29 days of beauty and joy and life. "Isn't that better than 29 days of terror?" Lyria wanted to scream. Wanted to run through the streets shouting the truth. Wanted to shake every person she passed and tell them their world was ending. Instead, she took the scroll. "What do you need me to do?" "Tomorrow, you'll meet with our chief marine architect, a man named Kale. Officially, you're designing new temples in the outer districts." Mythic paused. "Unofficially, you're building evacuation stations. Each one can hold 1,000 people. We're building 10. 10,000 people," Lyria said numbly. "Out of 10 million. 10,000 lives, Lyria. That's not nothing. And this architect, Kale, does he know?" "No one can know, especially not him." Mythic's expression hardened. "He's brilliant but skeptical, questions everything. If he knew the truth, he'd demand answers we can't give. He'd make noise we can't afford. So I lie to him while we build something to save his life. You protect Atlantis until the very end. That's what we do." Mythic gripped her shoulder. "And Lyria, the visions showed me one more thing. This Kale, he's important. More important than even he knows. Keep him close. Keep him safe. And whatever you do, don't let him discover the truth until it's too late to matter." Lyria left the Temple of Tides carrying the weight of 10 million deaths. Outside, Atlantis gleamed under 3 moons, its crystal towers singing in harmony with the wind, its canals glowing with bioluminescent fish, its people laughing and dancing and living. 29 days. She had 29 days to save a fraction of a civilization while lying to everyone she loved. 29 days until the greatest city in history drowned. The countdown had begun. Kyle hated the temple districts, not the architecture. That was magnificent. Not even the priests, who were mostly harmless. He hated the atmosphere. That heavy reverence, the whispered prophecies, the constant implication that if you didn't believe in their water magic and crystal visions, you were somehow less enlightened. Kale believed in math, in physics, in forces that could be measured and predicted and controlled. The priest called it skepticism. He called it sanity. Architect Kale? He turned toward the voice and nearly dropped his blueprints. The priestess was young, maybe 25, only a few years younger than him. But it wasn't her age that caught him off guard. It was her eyes. They were gray like storm water, and they looked haunted, like she'd seen something terrible and couldn't unsee it. Priestess Lyria. He checked his orders. I'm here about the temple project. Just Lyria is fine. She managed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We'll be working closely for the next few weeks. Something in her tone made his engineering instincts prickle. The new temple design, right? Though I have to say, it's unusual to call in a hydraulic specialist for religious buildings. These temples need special drainage systems. She was choosing her words too carefully. In case of flooding during high tide ceremonies. You know how unpredictable the tides have been. Kale had designed water systems across Atlantis for 7 years. He knew the tide patterns better than most priests knew their own prayers, and he knew when someone was lying. But orders from the king were orders from the king. He unrolled the architectural plans. All right, let's talk about what you actually need. Lyria tensed. I don't. Look at these locations. He pointed to the marked sites. All on high ground, all near major roads, all with direct access to the harbor or city exits. He met her eyes. Priestess Lyria, these aren't temples, these are evacuation points. The question is, evacuation from what? The color drained from her face. For a heartbeat, he thought she might faint. I can't discuss that, she whispered. Can't or won't. Can't. She looked at him with those storm-gray eyes, and he saw something that made his breath catch. Pure, undiluted terror. And you shouldn't ask. The temple bells chimed noon. Crystal clear notes echoed across the city. Kyle studied her face. Every instinct told him to push, to demand answers, to refuse the job until someone explained what was really happening. But that look in her eyes, whatever she knew, it was eating her alive. Fine, he said quietly. We'll call them temples. But I need real numbers if you want functional buildings. How many people need these temples to accommodate? Lyria consulted a sealed document. Approximately 1,000 per structure, 10 locations total. The math hit him like cold water. 10,000 people. In a city of 10 million. You're choosing who lives and who dies, he said flatly. It's not that simple. Seems pretty simple to me. He started rolling up his plans. Find another architect. I won't be part of this. Wait! She grabbed his arm. The moment she touched him, electricity jumped between them. Literal electricity. Blue light crackled from her fingers to his skin. Both of them jerked back, shocked. You have crystal affinity? Lyria stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Your family? Do you have Water Clan blood? My grandmother was from the Outer Islands. Yeah. What is that? Everything. She was looking at him differently now. Kel, you need to take this job. Not because the king ordered it, but because what we're building might be the difference between extinction and survival. And I think you might be the key to something even the High Council didn't predict. Then tell me the truth. I can't. Not yet. She took a shaky breath. But I can show you something. Something that might make you understand why this matters. She held out her hand. Every logical bone in his body screamed to refuse, to walk away from whatever conspiracy this was. But there was something in her expression. Not manipulation, not calculation. Desperation. Against his better judgment, he took her hand. The crystal affinity sparked again, but this time it didn't hurt. It felt like connection, like two separate circuits suddenly completing a current. "I hope you know what you're doing," he said. "So do I," Lyria whispered. And she led him deeper into the temple, toward a room that would change everything he thought he knew about the world. The chamber of liquid mirrors was the most beautiful room Cale had ever seen. Pools of crystalline water covered the floor in perfect circles, each one still as glass. Above them, the domed ceiling was carved from a single piece of translucent blue crystal that turned sunlight into waves of aquamarine light. It felt like being underwater without the weight of the ocean. "What is this place?" His voice echoed strangely, as if the water was absorbing some frequencies and amplifying others. "Where we see what's coming." Lyria knelt beside the largest pool. Her hands trembled. "Kyle, what I'm about to show you, there are maybe 50 people in all of Atlantis who know. The king, the high council, senior priests. That's it." "Why tell me?" "Because you touched me and the crystal recognized you. That's not supposed to happen. It means—" She shook her head. "I don't fully understand it yet. But it means you're part of this whether we planned it or not." She closed her eyes and placed both hands in the water. The pool erupted with light. At first, Cale saw nothing but swirling colors. Blues and greens and violets mixing like oil on water. Then the colors resolved into shapes, images, visions. He saw Atlantis from above, the great spiral city spreading out from the central temple like a nautilus shell. Then the perspective shifted, moved forward in time. The water around the island began to churn. The 3 moons aligned in the sky, and Cale's stomach dropped. Waves. Enormous waves, taller than the highest towers, rolling toward the city like moving mountains. The jade walls shattered. The crystal spires cracked. Water poured through every street, every canal, every home. And people. Gods. The people. Running, screaming, drowning. The grand temple split down the middle. The royal palace collapsed. The harbor district disappeared beneath black water in seconds. And then there was nothing but ocean. Atlantis was gone. When? The word came out as a croak. 28 days. Lyria pulled her hands from the water. The vision vanished, leaving only normal reflected ceiling light. When the 3 moons align over the pillars of Atlas, that's when it happens. Cale's mind raced, trying to process, trying to find the flaw in what he'd seen. That's impossible. The island's foundations go down to bedrock. The shield crystals protect us from storm surge, even a tsunami. This isn't a natural disaster. Lyria stood, water dripping from her hands. The visions show something breaking, deep beneath the island, like the earth itself is rejecting us. An earthquake? Something worse. Something we did. She looked at him with those haunted eyes. Atlantis is the most technologically advanced civilization in history. Cale. We've done things with crystal energy that border on impossible. Lit an entire city without fire, purified water without boiling, extended human life by decades. But energy doesn't disappear. It just transforms. And we've been pulling it from somewhere. The Earth's core, Cale said slowly, his engineer's mind connecting pieces. You've been draining geothermal energy for centuries. Longer, millennia, and the Earth is tired, unstable. The readings from the deep sensors have been getting worse for months, but the Council kept it quiet because admitting our power source is failing would cause panic. So they're letting everyone die instead? Anger flared hot in his chest. 10 million people, Lyria! We can't save 10 million people in 28 days. Her voice cracked. Do you know what would happen if we announced this? Riots, looting, murder. People would kill each other trying to escape. The ships we have would sink from overcrowding. Neighboring islands would close their ports. It would be chaos and slaughter, and maybe, a few thousand would escape. Less than we can save quietly. So the plan is to lie? To keep building these evacuation points and just choose who gets to live? The plan is to save everyone we can, without destroying what's left of our civilization in the process. She stepped closer. Kale, I hate this. I hate lying. I hate choosing. I see those people in the streets every day knowing what's coming, and I want to scream the truth. But if I do, everyone dies, and dies in terror. This way, at least some survive. And the rest get to spend their last days in the greatest city ever built, with their families, in peace. He wanted to argue, wanted to find the moral high ground. But as an engineer, he understood the math, the brutal calculus of limited resources and impossible choices. Why only 10,000? He asked. If we have 28 days, we could build more evacuation points, move faster, get ships from other islands. We're already pushing the limits of what we can do without drawing attention. Every construction project needs permits, materials, workers. We're disguising 10 major building projects as temples. Try disguising 50. She shook her head. And the ships? The nearest friendly port is 3 days' sail. We'd need weeks just to negotiate refuge, and that's assuming they'd even take us. Most kingdoms hate Atlantis. They think we're arrogant magicians who look down on them. Because we are, Kale muttered. Because we were. Lyria's expression softened slightly. Maybe this is our punishment, for all the hubris, all the excess. We built paradise and thought we'd live in it forever. They stood in silence, the water pools reflecting fragments of their faces. So what do you need from me? Kyle finally asked. Relief flooded Lyria's features. Design evacuation stations that can withstand the initial surge, structures that won't collapse when the waves hit, and... She hesitated. There's something else. Something about your crystal affinity. When you touched me, the power amplified. I've never felt anything like it. What does that mean? I don't know yet. But maybe it means you can help strengthen the protective wards. Buy us more time. Or... She looked at the largest mirror. Maybe it means something else. Something the visions haven't shown me yet. Kale studied her face. The exhaustion, the fear, the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, this catastrophe could be survived. He thought about walking away, going back to his normal life for 28 more days. Pretending he didn't know. But he'd seen the vision, seen his city drown, and somehow, impossibly, he might be able to save a fragment of it. All right, he said. Show me the sights. We'll build your temples. Lyria's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If we're only saving 10,000 people, we better make damn sure those 10,000 survive. She nodded. Then we start tomorrow. I'll show you the first location at dawn. As Kyle left the temple, he looked up at the 3 moons, currently scattered across the sky. In 28 days, they would align, and Atlantis would die. But maybe, just maybe, its people wouldn't die with it. The first construction site was in the Merchants' Quarter, on a hill overlooking the western harbor. Officially, it would be a temple to Poseidon. Actually, it was a reinforced bunker, disguised as a temple. The foundation needs to go deeper, Kale said, marking up the plans. If we're expecting waves tall enough to overtop the seawall, the structure has to be anchored to bedrock, 20 feet minimum. Lyria watched him work, fascinated by how quickly his mind processed engineering problems. Won't that take too long? Not if we use crystal boring. You know, that technology you priests claim doesn't exist but definitely use for the deep temple foundations. A smile tugged at her lips, the first genuine one he'd seen from her. I have no idea what you're talking about. Right. And I'm sure this prayer focus chamber has nothing to do with generating a structural shield field. You're very perceptive for someone who doesn't believe in magic. I don't believe in magic. I believe in energy manipulation that you call magic, because it sounds more mysterious. He sketched a support beam configuration. Same principle as our water purifiers, just scaled up. Crystals amplify and direct natural forces. Nothing supernatural about it. Then how do you explain the visions? That made him pause. I don't know yet. But there's probably a quantum entanglement explanation. Information traveling through crystal matrices at speeds that seem impossible. Or, Lyria said softly, some things really are magic. Before he could respond, a group of workers arrived, 20 strong men and women ready to begin excavation. Lyria moved to greet them, falling easily into her priestess role, blessing the site with formal prayers. Kyle watched her work. She was good at this. The performance, the authority, the calm assurance that everything was proceeding according to divine plan. No one would guess she was harboring civilization-ending secrets. But he saw the cracks. The way her smile faltered when she thought no one was looking. The way her hand shook slightly during the blessing. The exhaustion in her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. She's carrying too much, someone said beside him. Kale turned to find an older priestess, Marith, the high priestess herself. She wore the silver and blue robes of her station, but her face was deeply lined, as if she'd aged years in recent weeks. You know the truth, Kale said. Not a question. I'm the one who assigned her to you. Marith watched Lyria with something like maternal concern. She's brilliant, powerful, one of the most gifted water seers we've had in generations. But she's also young, and carrying a burden that would break most people. Why tell her at all? Why not keep the visions to yourself? Because she saw it independently. The mirrors show truth to those with the gift, whether we want them to or not. Marith sighed. And because we need her. Her power is essential for what's coming. What's coming besides drowning? The evacuation itself. Moving 10,000 people to safe points without anyone else noticing. Timing the departure so we don't trigger panic. And she met his eyes. Strengthening the protective wards long enough for people to escape. That last part requires enormous power. More than I have alone. And you think I can help with that? I know you can. When you touched Lyria, you created a resonance cascade I've only read about in ancient texts. Your crystal affinity isn't just rare. It's complementary to hers. Water and earth. Storm and stone. Together, you might be able to amplify the city's shields long enough to save thousands more. Kale's mind spun. You want me to do magic. I want you to manipulate energy using crystalline matrices, which you've already admitted is possible. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Call it whatever you like, but yes, Architect Kale, I want you to learn magic, fast. And if I can't, then the shields fail earlier, the waves hit harder, and fewer people escape. She placed a weathered hand on his shoulder. No pressure. Across the site, Lyria finished the blessing ceremony. The workers cheered and began unloading equipment. She looked over at Kale and Marith, and for a moment, her professional mask slipped. He saw raw fear. Help her, Marith said quietly. She's trying to save the world alone, and it's killing her. The High Priestess walked away, leaving Kyle with a choice he didn't want, and responsibilities he'd never asked for. He looked at Lyria, at the way she held herself together through sheer willpower, at the weight of secrets threatening to crush her. Damn it. He walked over. You eat breakfast? She blinked, surprised. What? It's a simple question. Did you eat this morning? No. I had temple duties and there's a fish vendor 3 blocks down. Best grilled salmon in the city. We're going. Kale, we have work. The workers know what to do for now, and you're going to collapse if you don't take care of yourself. He softened his tone. Consider it a strategic retreat. Can't save Atlantis if you faint from hunger. For a moment, he thought she'd refuse. Then her stomach growled audibly, and despite everything, despite the apocalypse countdown and impossible choices and the weight of 10 million lives, she laughed. It was a small sound, surprised and genuine. "All right," she said. "Fish sounds good." As they walked through the morning-lit streets of Atlantis, Kale realized something that should have terrified him. He was starting to care about this haunted priestess with storm-gray eyes. And in 27 days, none of it would matter, unless they could save enough pieces to rebuild. Over the next week, Kale learned that saving civilization was 90% logistics and 10% existential dread. The construction moved faster than any project he'd supervised, partly because they had unlimited funding and top workers. Mostly because everyone involved, though they didn't know why, felt an inexplicable urgency. Like the city itself was whispering, "Hurry, hurry, hurry." "The foundation's complete on Site 1, Kale reported during a midnight meeting in the temple. "Sites 2 and 3 are right behind, but we're burning through crystal matrix faster than projected. At this rate, we'll run out before finishing the last 3 locations." Lyria paced, exhausted, but unable to rest. They'd fallen into a rhythm over the past 7 days, working from dawn until well past dark, grabbing meals when they remembered to eat, collapsing for a few hours of sleep before starting again. "Can we substitute with lower-grade crystals?" she asked. "Not without weakening the structural integrity. These buildings need to survive impacts that would obliterate normal stone." He studied the supply charts. "We need access to the royal reserves. The king won't authorize that without explanation. Then we work with what we have and hope it's enough." Lyria stopped pacing and looked at him, really looked at him. "When did this become we? You could walk away, live your last few weeks in peace. Why are you still here?" Kyle thought about lying, about giving some noble answer about civic duty or the greater good, but they'd been through too much for pretense. "Because I've been working next to you for a week, and you haven't slept more than 3 hours a night. Because I watched you give your breakfast to a street kid yesterday while telling me you weren't hungry. Because you're trying to save the world while it tears you apart, and..." He paused. "Someone should share that burden." Something shifted in her expression. The walls she'd built, the priestess mask, the professional distance, cracked just slightly. "I saw my own death," she said quietly. "In the water mirror, the vision showed me drowning when the temple collapses. And I keep going because if I stop, if I think about it too long, I'll lose my mind. Maybe you won't die. Maybe we change the future. The visions are never wrong. Then they haven't met a sufficiently stubborn engineer." He moved closer. "Lyria, if I've learned anything in 7 years of building water systems, it's that nothing is impossible, just really difficult and expensive." She laughed. That same surprised sound from the fish vendor. "You're going to engineer our way out of a divine prophecy?" "I'm going to try." For a moment, they just looked at each other. The temple was silent except for the constant murmur of water through crystal channels. 3 moons cast silver blue light through the windows. 20 days left. "The High Priestess wants me to train you," Lyria said suddenly. "In crystal manipulation. She thinks you can help amplify the city's shields when the time comes. I don't know how to do magic." "Yes, you do. You just call it engineering." She held out her hand. "Will you let me teach you?" Kale looked at her outstretched hand, remembering the electric spark of their first touch, the crystal resonance that had convinced the High Priestess he was important. He took her hand. The connection was immediate and intense, like closing a circuit that had been open too long. Blue light pulsed between their joined palms, spreading up their arms in intricate patterns that looked almost like circuitry. "What is this?" he breathed. "Harmony." Lyria's eyes were wide. "Our crystal frequencies are synchronizing. That's not supposed to be possible without years of training." The light grew brighter. Cale felt something flowing through him. Not electricity, not heat, but something alive and aware. The crystal channels in the walls responded, glowing brighter. The water pools rippled, though no one touched them. "I can feel the entire city," Cale whispered. "Every canal, every power line, every shield crystal in every building. It's all connected. It's all singing. That's the grid, the network of crystal energy that powers Atlantis." Lyria's voice was awed. "Most people train for decades to feel even a fraction of this. You're doing it naturally. It's beautiful. It's dying." The awe left her voice. "Can you feel it? The degradation in the deep channels? The way the foundation crystals are cracking?" He focused, sending his awareness down, down, down through the layers of city, through bedrock, into the geothermal depths where the primary power crystals had sat for millennia. And he felt it. The crystals were fracturing, slowly but inevitably, like ice developing cracks under pressure. And when they shattered completely, "The island loses cohesion," he said, understanding. "The crystals aren't just power sources, they're holding the geological structure together. When they fail, the island breaks apart, and 10 million tons of rock collapsing into the ocean creates waves that will obliterate everything." Lyria squeezed his hand. "That's what's coming. Not just water. Geological apocalypse." Cale pulled back, breaking the connection. The light faded. The singing stopped. But he couldn't unhear it, couldn't unfeel the dying crystals beneath their feet. "Can we stabilize them?" "Maybe. For a few hours. Long enough for more people to evacuate." She met his eyes. "But it would take enormous power, and someone would have to go down there, into the deep channels, right into the center of the failing grid." "That's suicide." "Yes." Understanding crashed over him. "The visions. You drowning. You're not dying when the temple collapses. You're dying because you're going down there to stabilize the crystals." Lyria said nothing, which was answer enough. "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "Absolutely not. We'll find another way." "There is no other way. Someone with strong crystal affinity has to—" "Then I'll do it." "You don't know how. It takes years of training. You said I'm a natural. You said my affinity is complementary to yours." He grabbed her shoulders. "Lyria, you've carried this alone for too long. Let me help. Let me do the dangerous part. You'd die. Maybe, or maybe I'd succeed and give thousands more people time to escape." He softened his grip. "Isn't that worth the risk?" She looked at him with those storm-gray eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, he saw something other than despair. Hope. Terrifying, fragile hope. "I can't ask you to do this." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering." He managed a smile. "Besides, you still owe me for that breakfast. I won't let you die before you pay your debts." Despite everything, she smiled back. 1 grilled fish, plus interest, compounded daily. They were standing very close now, close enough that he could see flecks of blue in her gray eyes, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. 20 days until the end of the world, and Cale was starting to think that drowning might not be the worst fate. The worst fate would be surviving without her. "We should get back to work," Lyria said, but she didn't move away. "Probably. The construction teams will wonder where we are. Let them wonder." For one moment, one fragile, stolen moment, they let themselves forget about apocalypses and impossible choices, and the countdown to oblivion. They just stood together in the silver-blue moonlight, holding on to something that felt like hope. Then the temple bells chimed midnight, breaking the spell. 20 days, Lyria whispered. Then we better make them count. They returned to the construction plans, working through the night like they always did. But something had changed. They weren't just colleagues anymore, weren't just partners in conspiracy. They were something more. And the countdown continued. The 4th evacuation point was complete. The 5th was halfway done. The 6th and 7th were being excavated simultaneously. Cale had barely slept in 3 days, surviving on coffee and sheer stubbornness. "You look terrible," Lyria said, finding him at Site 7 at dawn. "You look worse." It was true. She'd lost weight. Her eyes were hollow, and he'd caught her crying twice this week. Once when a child asked her to bless her new doll. Once when an elderly couple walked past holding hands. Every person she saw was someone she couldn't save. "I had another vision last night," she said quietly. "The timeline is accelerating. The crystals are degrading faster than predicted." Cale's exhausted brain struggled to process. How much faster? "We might not have 15 days, maybe 12, maybe less. Can we move up the evacuation timeline?" Not without raising suspicions. She sat on a pile of lumber, suddenly looking impossibly tired. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Lying to everyone?" "Every day. I passed the market yesterday. There was a woman selling flowers, talking about her daughter's wedding next month, planning decorations, choosing music. So happy." Lyria's voice cracked. "There won't be a wedding. There won't be a next month. And she doesn't know." Cale sat beside her. Their shoulders touched. "If she knew," he said carefully, "what would she do? Really think about it. Would she spend these last days planning a wedding that won't happen? Or would she spend them terrified, grieving, watching her daughter fall apart? She'd want to know the truth. Would she? Or would she want her daughter's last days to be filled with joy instead of terror? He took Lyria's hand. The gesture had become natural over the past 2 weeks. "You're not just protecting people from death. You're protecting them from the fear of death. That's not nothing. It feels like cowardice. It feels like mercy." They sat in silence as the city woke around them. Street vendors setting up shop. Children laughing on their way to school. Workers heading to jobs. All of them unaware that their world was ending. "I'm glad you're here," Lyria said suddenly. "I know I've said that before, but I mean it. Before you, I was drowning in this alone. Now," she squeezed his hand, "now at least I have someone to drown with." Terrible metaphor given our situation. She laughed. Gods, he loved that sound. In the midst of apocalypse, she could still laugh. "Cale? Yeah? When this is over, if we survive, will you—" She hesitated. "Will you remember me?" The question hit him harder than it should have. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because you'll be busy rebuilding, finding survivors, starting over. And I'll be—" She trailed off. "You'll be what?" "I saw the vision, remember? I don't survive this. Visions can be wrong. They're never wrong. Then we'll make this the first time." He turned to face her fully. "Lyria, I don't know what happens in 12 days or 15 days or whenever the end comes. But I know that I'm not letting you die alone in some flooded chamber, because a prophecy said so. If you go into those deep channels, I'm going with you. You can't— Watch me." They stared at each other, both stubborn, both exhausted, both holding on to hope they had no right to feel. "You're infuriating," she said. "You're impossible," he replied. "We're perfect for each other." The words hung in the air between them, too honest, too raw, too real for the careful distance they'd been maintaining. Cale reached up and brushed a strand of dark hair from her face. His hand lingered against her cheek. "Lyria, A worker shouted from across the site. "Architect, we've hit water. Need you to check the pump configuration." The moment shattered. Lyria stood quickly, wiping her eyes. "You should go." "We're not done with this conversation." "I know." She managed a small smile. 12 days left. We have time. But they both knew that was a lie. They were running out of time for everything. The 8th evacuation point was complete. The 9th was being rushed through construction with 3 shifts working around the clock. The 10th. "We don't have enough crystal matrix to finish the 10th site," Kale said flatly. "I've run the numbers a dozen times. We're short by at least 30%. The emergency council meeting included only 5 people: Kale, Lyria, High Priestess Marith, the King's chief advisor Lord Theron, and Captain Aldrich of the Royal Guard, the man responsible for quietly identifying and moving the chosen 10,000 to evacuation points when the time came. "Then we work with 9 stations," Theron said coldly. 9,000 lives is still significant. "We could reduce the structural reinforcement on each site," Aldrich suggested. "Spread the crystal matrix thinner." "And risk complete failure when the waves hit?" Kyle shook his head. "These buildings need to withstand impacts equivalent to being hit by a falling tower. Cut the reinforcement, and we might save 0 people." "What about the royal reserves?" Marith asked. "Surely in circumstances like these, the king won't authorize it." Theron's expression was grim. "He's convinced that depleting the reserves would accelerate the crystal degradation. He believes we're overreacting to natural seismic activity." "The king doesn't know about the visions," Lyria said quietly. "Does he?" Silence answered her question. "You're telling me," Kale said slowly, "that the king of Atlantis doesn't know his city is about to be destroyed?" "He's not receptive to prophecy," Theron admitted. "He believes in science, technology, measurable phenomena. When the High Priestess tried to warn him months ago, he dismissed it as religious hysteria." "So we're running this entire operation without royal approval?" "We have approval to build temples, approval to conduct emergency preparedness drills, approval for supply requisitions within normal parameters." Theron met Kale's eyes. "What we don't have is approval to tell 10 million people that their deaths are imminent and inevitable. Because he doesn't believe it's true. Because he can't believe it's true. If he did, he'd have to order mass evacuation, and the resulting chaos would kill more people than the flood." The advisor's face was haggard. "The king is a good man, architect, but he's trapped between impossible choices. So he's chosen to believe the optimistic scenario, that our engineers will stabilize the foundations, that the seismic activity will pass, that Atlantis will endure as it always has." "And when he's proven wrong," Kale asked, "he'll die with his people, believing until the end that he made the right choice." The weight of that settled over the room like a shroud. "We need that crystal matrix," Marith said finally. "If we can't get it from the reserves, where else?" Kale thought, his engineer's mind running through every crystal source in the city. "The Temple of Tides. You have massive crystals in the foundation, the ones that power the water mirrors and the deep sensors. If we could repurpose even a fraction of that material." "Absolutely not." Marith's voice was iron. "Those crystals are sacred. They've been in place for 1,000 years. They're the heart of our prophetic abilities. They're also the difference between 9,000 lives and 10,000 lives. And what happens when we lose the ability to monitor the crystal degradation? When we can't see the visions that warn us if the timeline accelerates even more?" She stood. "No. Find another source." "There is no other source." Kale's frustration finally boiled over. "I've inventoried every crystal in every public building in this city. We've already stripped the university, the observatory, half the municipal buildings. The only significant reserves left are the royal vaults, which we can't access, and the temple foundations. Those are the only options. Then we work with 9 sites. Then we condemn 1,000 people who could have been saved. Enough. Captain Aldrich's voice cut through the argument. We're 10 days from potential catastrophe. Fighting among ourselves helps no one. He turned to Lyria, who'd been silent throughout the exchange. Priestess, you've been quiet. What do you think? Lyria had been staring at her hands, and when she looked up, Kale saw something new in her expression. Not despair, not fear, resolution. I think, she said carefully, that we're asking the wrong question. We're arguing about materials when we should be asking, what's the actual minimum number of structures needed for 10,000 people? We calculated this, Theron said. 1,000 per structure, 10 structures. But what if we could expand capacity? Make the existing 9 sites hold more people? She looked at Kale. Is that possible? His mind raced. Maybe. If we went vertical instead of just relying on ground floor capacity, add upper levels, reinforced stairs, multiple pressure-sealed chambers. He grabbed a charcoal stick and started sketching on the table. The foundation work is already done on all 9 sites. We'd just be building up instead of out. Would need less crystal matrix since we're not creating new structural shields from scratch. How many more people? Aldrich asked. Per site? Maybe 200 additional capacity if we're clever about space usage. Across 9 sites? He calculated quickly. 1,800 more people. Total evacuation capacity of 10,800. Hope flickered in the room like a candle in wind. How fast can you implement this? Marith asked. 3 days per site if we work triple shifts, but we're already working triple shifts. Kale ran the numbers again. We'd need to pull workers from sites 8 and 9, delay their completion, focus everything on retrofitting sites 1 through 7 first. That's risky, Theron said. If the timeline accelerates and we haven't finished, then we have 7 completed sites instead of 9 incomplete ones. Lyria stood, moving to Kale's side to study his sketches. It's the better option. Focus on what we can control. Captain Aldrich nodded. I agree. And if we're housing more people per structure, I can adjust the evacuation lists, prioritize families over individuals, children over adults, skilled workers over nobility. The nobles won't like that, Theron warned. The nobles can file complaints with Poseidon. Aldrich's smile was cold. In 10 days, rank won't matter. Only survival will. Marith studied Kale's sketches. This could work. Architect, how soon can you start? Today, now, I'll need your authorization to pull workers and redirect materials. You have it. And one more thing. Kyle met her eyes. I need Lyria with me full-time. Her crystal affinity can help direct the structural reinforcement. We'll work faster together. It wasn't entirely a lie. They did work faster together. But more than that, he wanted her close, wanted to protect her, wanted every remaining moment they had. Marith saw right through him. Very well. Priestess Lyria is assigned to you exclusively until this is finished. As the meeting dispersed, Theron pulled Kale aside. You care for her. It wasn't a question. Is it that obvious? Only to anyone with eyes. The advisor's expression softened. For what it's worth, she cares for you too. I've known Lyria since she was a novice priestess. I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you. We have 10 days. Then don't waste them. Theron gripped his shoulder. The world is ending, Architect. Take what happiness you can. Kale found Lyria waiting outside, looking out over the city as the sun set. The 3 moons were rising. Closer together now, their alignment becoming visible. 7 days until they converge, she said without turning. Maybe less until the crystals fail completely. He stood beside her. Are you scared? Terrified. You? Same. He took her hand. Lyria, if we only have 7 days, don't. She turned to face him. Don't say goodbye. Don't make this about endings. We still have work to do, people to save. And I refuse to spend our last days mourning what we haven't lost yet. What do you want to spend them doing? She kissed him. It was soft and desperate and tasted like salt tears, like stolen time and impossible hope, like everything they couldn't say and everything they'd never have. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. I want to spend them doing that, she whispered, and building your impossible towers, and saving as many lives as we can, and pretending, just for a little while, that we might have a future. We might. The visions are not written in stone or crystal or whatever. He wiped tears from her cheeks. I'm not giving up on you, on us, on any of this. Even though it's hopeless, especially because it's hopeless. That's when stubborn engineers do their best work. She laughed through her tears. You're insane. Probably. Is it working? Unfortunately, yes. They stood there as the city lit up around them. 10 million lights from 10 million people who didn't know they were living their last days. It should have been tragic. Instead, in that moment, it was beautiful. Come on, Kyle said. We have towers to build. Hand in hand, they walked back into the dying city, ready to fight the inevitable with math and hope and whatever time they had left. The retrofit was working. Sites 1 through 5 were complete, multi-level structures that could now hold 1,200 people each. 6 and 7 were nearly finished. 8 and 9 had been temporarily abandoned to focus resources on the upgrades. Kyle hadn't slept in 36 hours. His hands shook from exhaustion and too much coffee, but they were going to make it. They were actually going to make it. The king is asking questions, Lyria said, finding him at Site 6. About why we're building temples that look more like fortresses. About the unusual construction schedule. About resource usage. What did the council tell him? That we're preparing for hurricane season, strengthening the coastal structures. She sat beside him on a support beam. He's not stupid, Kale. He knows something is happening. But he's choosing not to look too closely because looking would mean facing the truth. Can you blame him? No. Sometimes I wish I could do the same. Just close my eyes and pretend this isn't happening. They'd been like this for days, stealing moments between work, holding on to each other like anchors in a storm. They didn't talk about the future because there wasn't one. Didn't make plans beyond the next construction phase. Just existed in the present, together, trying to save fragments of a dying world. I need to show you something, Lyria said suddenly. Tonight, when the work shift ends. What is it? Something I should have shown you weeks ago. Her expression was conflicted. Something that might change how you see me. Lyria, nothing could... You don't know that, not until you see. She stood. Meet me at the Temple of Tides after sunset. Come alone. She left before he could respond, leaving him with questions and worry, and the constant countdown ticking in his head. 7 days. 168 hours. Every second mattered. That evening, Kale found Lyria in the chamber of liquid mirrors. She stood at the edge of the largest pool, her reflection fragmented by ripples. I've been coming here every night, she said without preamble, checking the visions, looking for changes, hoping somehow we've altered the future enough to matter. And? The timeline keeps compressing. What was supposed to happen in 7 days might happen in 5 or 4. The crystal degradation is accelerating exponentially. She turned to face him. But that's not what I wanted to show you. She placed her hands in the water. The pool erupted with light, but different than before. Instead of showing Atlantis from above, it showed a street-level view. People walking, living. And then... Kyle saw himself. Not present-day Kyle. Future Kyle, standing on the deck of a ship, looking back at where Atlantis used to be. Older, scarred, alive. You survive, Lyria said quietly. The visions show you making it to one of the evacuation points, getting on a ship, reaching the mainland. You survive, Kyle. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt cold. And you? Lyria didn't answer. She just moved her hands, shifting the vision. The perspective changed, diving down, down, down beneath the city, into the deep crystal chambers. And there she was, Lyria, surrounded by blue light, her hands on the massive foundation crystals, pouring everything she had into holding them together just a little longer. The water rose around her, higher, higher, until it covered her completely, and she drowned. The vision faded. The pool returned to normal. That's what I wanted you to see, Lyria said. Her voice was steady, but tears ran down her face. The full picture. You survive. I don't, and I need you to accept that. No. Kale. No. He moved to her, gripping her shoulders. I told you before, if you're going into those chambers, I'm going with you. You can't. The visions show you need to survive. You're important somehow. Maybe you help rebuild. Maybe you preserve knowledge. Maybe you just need to live and remember us. But you can't die down there with me. Watch me. This isn't stubbornness. This is fate. The visions are never wrong. Then they're about to be wrong for the first time. His voice echoed off the crystal walls. Lyria, I am not letting you drown alone while I sail away to safety. I don't care what the visions show. I don't care about fate or prophecy or any of it. I care about you. She stared at him, shocked into silence. I love you, Kale said, the words tumbling out. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know the world is ending and this is probably the worst timing in history. But I love you. And I'm not losing you. Not without a fight. You can't love me. We don't have time. We have exactly as much time as we have, and I'm not wasting it. He pulled her close. Tell me you don't feel the same. Tell me these past weeks meant nothing. Tell me you want me to leave you to die alone. Tell me that, and I'll walk away. Lyria shook in his arms. I can't. Why not? Because I love you too, you impossible man. She looked up at him, tears and terror and desperate hope all mixed together. I love you, and it's the worst thing that could have happened because now I have to watch you sail away while I... He kissed her to stop the words. Kissed her like they had all the time in the world instead of days. Like the ocean wasn't coming. Like they could build a future instead of just fighting for fragments of the present. When they broke apart, both were crying. We'll find another way, Kyle whispered. There has to be another way. The visions can be changed. We'll prove it. He wiped tears from her cheeks. Lyria, you've spent weeks trying to save everyone else. Let me try to save you. You can't save me and save yourself. Then we'll save each other, or we'll drown together. But I'm not leaving you. She buried her face against his chest, sobbing. Months of pressure and fear and impossible choices finally breaking through her careful control. He held her, this brilliant, brave woman who'd been carrying the weight of the world alone for so long. 7 days, she whispered. Then we better make them count. They stayed in the chamber of liquid mirrors until long after midnight, holding each other, making promises they probably couldn't keep, and refusing to let go until the temple bells forced them back to the present. Back to construction sites and evacuation plans and the relentless countdown. But something had changed. They weren't just partners anymore, weren't just allies in conspiracy. They were in love. And love, Kale was learning, made even apocalypse feel survivable. It's accelerating faster. Lyria burst into the construction site, her face pale. The deep sensors are showing massive crystal fracturing. We have 4 days at most. Maybe 3. Kyle's stomach dropped. The towers aren't finished. 8 and 9 are still incomplete. We need at least 5 more days. We don't have 5 days. Her voice broke. Kale, the foundation crystals are failing right now. I can feel them dying. It's like the earth itself is screaming. Around them, workers continued their labor, unaware that the timeline had just collapsed, unaware that they were 3 days from oblivion. Captain Aldrich appeared, having heard Lyria's announcement. If we only have 3 to 4 days, we need to begin evacuations now, quietly, but now. How? Kale demanded. We can't move 10,000 people without someone noticing. We tell them it's an emergency drill, a test of our disaster preparedness systems. Aldrich was already mentally organizing logistics. We start with families in the outer districts, tell them they've been selected for a training exercise, house them in the completed evacuation towers overnight. And when they realize it's not a drill, by then it won't matter. They'll be safe inside reinforced structures when the waves hit. The captain's face was grim. It's not perfect, but it's what we have. Marith had appeared as well, drawn by the commotion. 4 days. The prophecy said 7. The prophecy was optimistic. Lyria's hands were shaking. The crystal degradation is cascading. Each failure accelerates the next. It's exponential collapse. Then we need to begin stabilization efforts immediately. Marith looked at Kale. You and Lyria need to go into the deep channels today. Buy us time. Today? Kale's heart raced. We're not ready. No one is ever ready for this. The High Priestess's eyes were ancient and sad. But if you don't stabilize those crystals, the island could collapse tomorrow. Today is all we have. Lyria met Kale's eyes. In that look was everything they'd shared. Stolen moments, desperate hope, love discovered too late. Together? She asked quietly. Together, he confirmed. Then we leave in an hour. That gives us time to prepare. Lyria turned to Marith. Send word to the council. Begin the evacuations. And... Her voice caught. Tell them we're sorry we couldn't save everyone. You're saving who you can. That's all anyone can do. Marith embraced her, a rare display of affection from the normally stoic priestess. May the tides carry you home, child. As preparations began around them, workers being given new orders, evacuation lists being activated, supplies being loaded, Kale and Lyria stood together at the center of controlled chaos. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified. You? Same. She took his hand. But at least we're terrified together. Lyria, about the vision, the one showing me surviving, and you. I know. You're going to try to change it. And I love you for that. She smiled sadly. But promise me something. Anything. If you can only save one of us, save yourself. The world needs people like you. Engineers who can rebuild. People who remember what we were. I'm not promising that. Kyle. No. If we're going down there together, we're coming back together. That's the only acceptable outcome. He cupped her face in his hands. I didn't fall in love with you just to lose you the same week. That's not how fate works. Then fate and I are going to have a serious disagreement. Despite everything, she laughed. You really think you can argue with the universe? I'm an engineer. Arguing with the universe is literally my job description. An assistant approached with diving equipment, modified crystal breathers that would allow them to survive in the flooded deep channels, reinforced suits that could withstand pressure, and most importantly, power crystals attuned to each of their specific frequencies. 1 hour, the assistant said. The tide will be low. Best time to enter the deep access shaft. "We'll be ready," Kale said. But as he helped Lyria into her diving suit, he wondered if anyone could ever really be ready to descend into the dying heart of a civilization. The access shaft dropped straight down for 300 feet before leveling out into the crystal chambers. It was hot, dangerously hot, and the pressure made Kale's ears pop painfully, even with the suit protection. "The temperature is rising," Lyria said through the communication crystal. "The geothermal regulation is failing." They moved through passages carved from solid rock, walls embedded with thousands of smaller crystals that pulsed with dying light. Kyle could feel what Lyria had described, the screaming of the earth, the slow-motion catastrophe unfolding beneath their feet. "How far to the primary chamber?" he asked. "Another 100 yards, then down one more level." The passage opened into a massive cavern, and Kale's breath caught. The foundation crystals were enormous, each one at least 20 feet tall, arranged in a precise geometric pattern around a central hub. They pulsed with blue-white light that flickered irregularly, like a heartbeat going into arrhythmia, and they were fracturing. Visible cracks spiderwebbed across their surfaces, spreading even as Kale watched. "How do we stabilize them?" His voice echoed in the vast space. "We channel our energy through the hub crystal, feed power into the system, hold the fractures together long enough for people to evacuate." Lyria moved to the center, where the largest crystal, the hub, rose from the floor like a translucent tree. "It'll require everything we have. All our crystal affinity, all our strength, everything." "For how long?" "As long as we can. Hours, if we're lucky. Maybe a day." She placed her hands on the hub crystal. "Ready?" Kyle joined her, placing his hands next to hers on the smooth surface. The moment they made contact, power surged through them. It was like being struck by lightning and embraced by the ocean simultaneously. Energy poured from the crystal into their bodies, through their bodies, back into the crystal in a feedback loop that built and built and built. "I've got it!" Lyria shouted over the roar of power. "Can you feel the pattern?" He could. The crystal network was like a three-dimensional musical score. Each crystal a note, the whole structure a symphony, and they were conducting it. Kale pushed his consciousness into the system, feeling for the fractures, the weak points. He found dozens, hundreds, thousands of tiny cracks spreading through the crystal matrix like disease, and he began to seal them. It was delicate work. Too much force and the crystals would shatter completely. Too little and the fractures would continue spreading. He had to find the exact pressure, the precise frequency, the perfect resonance. There! Lyria guided his attention to a major fracture line. That's the critical point. If we can stabilize that, the rest should hold longer. Together, they focused their combined energy on the fracture. Slowly, painfully slowly, the crack stopped spreading, began to close, sealed itself with new growth. A massive tremor shook the chamber. "What was that?" Kale gasped. "Earthquake. Small one, but it's starting." Lyria's face was pale, sweat pouring down her temples. "Kale, we need to work faster." They poured more power into the system. Kale felt his strength draining, felt exhaustion creeping in, but he pushed harder, sealed more fractures, strengthened weak points, bought more time. Another tremor, larger this time. Rocks fell from the ceiling. "How long have we been down here?" Kyle asked. "An hour, maybe more." Lyria's hands were shaking. "I can feel the system stabilizing. We're actually doing it." "How much more time do you think we've bought?" Before she could answer, a massive crack echoed through the chamber. One of the peripheral crystals, a huge pillar near the eastern wall, split down the middle. "No." Lyria redirected her power toward the damaged crystal, trying to hold it together. But it was too late. The split widened, and as that crystal failed, the load shifted to the others. Fractures spread faster, a cascade of failures that their combined power couldn't stop. "The system is collapsing," Kale shouted. "We need to get out of here." "Not yet. If we can just stabilize the hub crystal, the others can survive independently." "Lyria, the ceiling is starting to collapse. I'm not leaving these people to die." Kyle understood, but he also understood structural engineering. The chamber would collapse within minutes. They had to choose: leave now and survive, or stay and die accomplishing nothing. "Listen to me," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "We've bought them time. Maybe 6 hours, maybe 12. But if we stay, we die and help no one. If we leave now, we can help with the evacuation, save lives directly." Lyria looked at the failing crystals, tears streaming down her face. "It's not enough time. It's all we have." Another tremor. A support beam crashed down 10 feet away. "Lyria, we have to go. Now." She pulled her hands from the hub crystal, and the power flow stopped abruptly. The sudden absence felt like being plunged into ice water. They ran. Behind them, the chamber began its final collapse. Crystals shattering, rock falling, the earth itself giving up. They made it to the access shaft just as the main chamber ceiling came down. Began climbing, hand over hand, fighting exhaustion, driven by pure survival instinct. They were 50 feet from the surface when water started pouring down the shaft. "The ocean's breaking through." Lyria grabbed his hand. "Climb faster." Kyle's arms screamed with effort. His lungs burned, but he climbed, dragging Lyria with him, refusing to let go even as water surged around them. They burst from the access hatch and collapsed on solid ground, gasping, soaked, alive. Around them, the city was in chaos. Alarms were sounding. The ground was shaking continuously now. And the ocean was rising. Impossibly fast. Water flooding the lower streets, pushing inland like a living thing. "It's happening," Lyria whispered. "We're out of time." Kale looked at the sky. The 3 moons were aligned, forming a perfect triangle directly overhead. "How long did we buy them?" "I don't know. Hours at most." She struggled to her feet. "We need to reach the evacuation points. Help people get to safety." They staggered toward the nearest tower, Site 3, in the merchant quarter. Around them, people were starting to panic, realizing the drill was something more. Seeing the water rising, feeling the earth shake. The secret was out. And the countdown had reached 0. Site 3 was chaos. Captain Aldrich and his guards were trying to maintain order as hundreds of people pushed toward the entrance. Far more than the 1,000 slots allocated. Someone had talked. Or people had simply guessed. Either way, the careful evacuation plan had dissolved into panic. "Kale." Aldrich spotted them. "Thank the gods. We need to seal the upper levels. Water's coming in faster than predicted." "How many are inside?" Lyria asked. 1,400. We're over capacity, but I couldn't turn away children." The captain's face was anguished. "Other sites are reporting similar numbers. We've got maybe 12,000 people in the towers. Everyone else?" He didn't finish. Didn't have to. Another tremor shook the city. Stronger than before. Kyle watched a tower in the distance crack and topple, crushing buildings beneath it. "The island's breaking apart," he said numbly. "Not just flooding, literally fragmenting." "Then we seal these people in and pray the structures hold." Aldrich started issuing orders to his guards. "Close the pressure doors. Activate the shield crystals." Kyle moved through the crowd, helping terrified families to the upper levels, sealing doors behind them, reinforcing weak points with whatever crystal power he had left. Beside him, Lyria did the same, her hands glowing with faint blue light as she strengthened wards. They were on the top level when the first major wave hit. It came from the east, a wall of water 60 feet high, roaring like a living beast. Kale watched in horror as it engulfed entire districts, swallowing buildings, sweeping away everything in its path. The wave struck Site 3 with the force of a god's fist. The building shuddered. Crystal shields flared blue-white. Structural supports groaned, but they held. Inside, people screamed. Children cried, but they were alive. "It's working," Lyria gasped. "Your design is working." But outside, the rest of Atlantis was dying. Kale stood at the observation port and watched his city drown. Watched the temple districts flood. Watched the royal palace collapse. Watched millions of lives end in minutes. He wanted to look away. Couldn't. "This is my fault," Lyria whispered beside him. "I knew. For weeks I knew. And I let them all die. You saved 12,000 people. I killed 10 million. You saved who you could." Kel pulled her away from the window, made her look at him instead of the destruction. "Lyria, listen to me. You did everything humanly possible. You bore an impossible secret. You built these towers. You gave thousands of people a chance at life. That's not failure. That's heroism." "It doesn't feel heroic." "It never does." The building shook again. Through the observation port, Kale saw another massive wave approaching. This one even larger than the first. "Everyone to the center chambers," Aldrich shouted. "Away from the exterior walls." They herded people into the most protected areas, using their bodies to shield children, holding onto structural supports as the second wave hit. This time, the shields flickered. "The crystals are degrading." Lyria fought her way to the power center. "I need to reinforce them." "You're exhausted. You'll kill yourself." "Better than letting these people die." She placed her hands on the central crystal matrix and poured everything she had left into the shields. Blue light blazed through the structure, strengthening walls, sealing cracks, holding back the ocean through sheer force of will. The wave passed. The building held, and Lyria collapsed. "No." Kale caught her before she hit the floor. "Lyria, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. "Did it work?" "Yes. You saved them. Again." "Good." She smiled weakly. "I'm so tired, Kale." "I know, but you have to stay awake. We're not out of this yet." Around them, the building groaned and settled. Outside, the water level was rising steadily, but the worst seemed past. The towers were holding. The people inside were safe. For now. "How many waves were in the vision?" Kyle asked. 3 major surges. Then the island breaks apart, and the water just stays. Lyria's voice was fading. "Kale, I don't think I can get up." "Then don't. I've got you." He held her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, weak but steady. Captain Aldrich appeared. "The other sites are reporting in. Sites 1 through 7 survived. 8 and 9. He paused. 8 and 9 weren't finished. They collapsed. 2,000 people. 2,000 people who could have lived if they'd had just a few more days. "The mainland ships?" Kyle asked. 3 are confirmed visible on the horizon. They saw the disaster. They're coming to help. Aldrich sat heavily. "It's not enough. We've got 12,000 survivors and maybe capacity for 4,000 on those ships. Then we wait here. These buildings will survive as long as the crystal matrices hold. We can last for weeks if we have to. We'll send signals, coordinate rescue." A sound like the world tearing in half drowned out his words. It wasn't a wave. It was deeper, more fundamental. The floor beneath them tilted violently. Through the port, the skyline of Atlantis didn't just flood. It shattered. The entire island was fracturing along its crystal ley lines. "The foundation," Lyria whispered, her eyes wide with horrified understanding. "It's gone. The heart is gone." The vision was here. Water began to spray from seams in the walls. The central crystal matrix flickered, its light dying. The tower was failing. KL. Lyria gripped his arm, her strength returning in a final, desperate surge. The hub crystal in this tower. It's tied to the city's main grid. If it fails completely, the shockwave could destabilize the other sites. They'll all fail. He understood immediately. We can stabilize it. Like we tried below. For a few hours, maybe a day. Long enough for the ships to get here. Long enough to save these people. Her gaze was steady, the storm in her eyes finally calm. This is what the vision showed me. Not the deep chambers. This tower. This moment. The truth crashed over him. She had never seen herself drowning in the deep channels. She had seen herself drowning here, sacrificing herself to save the last of her people. She had simply misunderstood the location. No, he breathed, clutching her tighter. No, we find another way. We use my power. You taught me. It has to be both of us, Kyle. The harmony. Our combined strength is the only thing that can hold it. She touched his face, her hand cold. This is why our affinity mattered. This is the something more Marith saw. Not to save the city, but to save its legacy. Captain Aldrich was looking at them, understanding dawning on his face. The lower levels are flooding fast. We have minutes before the structural integrity fails. What is your command? Kyle looked from Aldrich's resigned face to the terrified families huddled in the chamber, to Lyria, beautiful, brave, and ready to fulfill her destiny. He saw the vision she had shown him in the temple, himself on a ship, looking back. Alone. He made his choice. Get everyone to the roof, Kale said, his voice suddenly strong and clear. Prepare to signal the ships. Lyria and I will buy you the time. Aldrich nodded, a look of profound respect and grief in his eyes. He began barking orders, ushering people toward the emergency stairwell to the roof. Kale, no, Lyria protested. The vision showed you surviving. You have to go. You have to lead them. The vision showed me surviving, he interrupted, pulling her toward the failing central crystal. It didn't show me how, and it never showed me living without you. We do this together. We always said we would. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't argue. She placed her hands on the flickering crystal. He placed his over hers. The connection ignited, brighter and more powerful than ever before. It was no longer just energy. It was their love, their hope, their shared will, forged in the last days of a dying world. Blue light, shot through with veins of gold, exploded through the chamber, sealing cracks, reinforcing walls, creating a stable bubble of air in the heart of the drowning tower. They could feel the ocean pressing in, feel the immense weight of a civilization ended. But within their joined light, there was peace. I love you, Kyle, Lyria whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder. I love you, Lyria, he said, holding her close as the water rose around their feet, then their knees, then their waists. And we're not drowning. We're going home. The light they generated grew so bright, it became the only thing that existed. The screams from above faded, replaced by the distant, hopeful sound of ship horns. They had held. The people were safe. The water reached their chests, but they kept their hands on the crystal, their foreheads touching, their eyes locked. The last thing Kale saw was her smile. The last thing he felt was her hand in his. Then, the light consumed everything. Kale stood on a windswept cliff on the mainland, looking out at the endless blue where Atlantis once stood. The settlement behind him, New Thera, was bustling with life. The 12,000 survivors had become 15, then 20, as other ships and pockets of refugees found their way to the fledgling community. He was their chief architect, their leader, the man who had helped design the towers that saved them. The man who had, according to Captain Aldrich and the other survivors, performed a miracle of crystal energy that held the tower together long enough for every single person to be lifted to safety by the mainland ships. They called him a hero. They never saw what happened after the roof access door sealed behind the last evacuee. He still dreamed of it. The final moment when the water closed over their heads. The feeling of Lyria's life force slipping away as the crystal, fully stabilized, could sustain itself. The way he had taken one last breath of the air they had saved for others, holding her lifeless body, ready to follow. And then, the jolt. The surge of power not from the city's grid but from within him. A final, desperate argument with the universe. He didn't remember how he breached the surface, gasping and alone in the churning water. He didn't remember the strong hands that pulled him onto a rescue skiff. He only remembered the weight of the silence where her soul had been. A small, warm hand slipped into his. A young girl named Alara, one of the children from their tower. She held out a smooth gray stone, worn by the sea. "For you," she said. "It looks like her eyes." Kyle took the stone. It was the color of a calm sea after a storm. The color of Lyria's eyes. He smiled down at the girl, the gesture still feeling foreign on his face. "Thank you, Alara." He looked back at the ocean. The visions had been right. He had survived. She had not. But they had been wrong too. He hadn't changed fate by saving her life. He had changed it by making her death mean something, by ensuring that the love they found in the ruins was the foundation upon which something new was built. He was the last memory of Atlantis, and he would ensure it was not a memory of hubris and downfall, but one of sacrifice, love, and resilience. The tides of destiny had pulled them under, but in their wake, they had left a new shore. And as Cale stood on that shore, holding a stone the color of storm-gray eyes, he knew that Atlantis was not truly lost. It lived on in every life they had saved. It lived on in him. And in the quiet moments, when the light hit the water just right, he could almost feel her hand in his again, and hear the echo of a city that had chosen to spend its last days building hope.